Hello and welcome. I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and thanks for hanging out with me on the 78th episode of the Weekly Ratchet. In this episode, folks, I've got something to say. I swear this table just stays dirty. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Weekly Ratchet. As always, I hope you've had a fantastic week of getting to play some games with family and or friends. There has been quite a bit of that here just outside of Richmond, Virginia, where I reside, and I've got a lot of games to chat about here in this episode, and I'm going to do that here in just a second. Lots sort of going on, and I'm going to actually talk on some other issues as I get through this video, but I have finally gotten back to some filming outside of the Ratchet itself. In fact, hopefully you can't see too much of it. I don't think you can, but the table behind me is covered in guts of 10 penny parks and the expansions. I've talked about that, of course, here on the channel already, but I'm putting together my preview video for that. The Kickstarter for 10 penny parks goes out, I believe, next week, right? I think about a week from today, which is Monday. So if you're interested in 10 penny parks, and you should be because it's a great game, be sure to go and check that out. Other than that, when that gets wrapped up, I'm going to be moving into Dicey Devices, and I've got a couple other things to chat about, including some new games. You know, I was kind of actually looking forward to coming out in this episode and saying, I didn't get any games lately. I've gotten everything from the retreat that I wanted, and so I'm, kind of done shopping. And that hasn't happened. Not at all. Quite a lot of games here, actually, to cover, and a very special little unveiling that I'll be doing in a moment. So the first one is Wandering Towers. This is a capstone game from Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling. I talked about this one in the last episode. I've played it several times. In fact, I think I've played it now 4 or 5 times. And just my daughter really, really liked it. We actually brought this for a game event over the weekend. I didn't get a chance to play it, but I did want to show you that I got in as well the deluxe Etsy bits. These are player made or whatever. They're sort of third party, but these are 3D printed little towers. Hopefully you can see those. And here is the Raven's Keep tower, and of course all this kind of stacks up. They even provided stickers so that you can sticker the towers, bringing in some of the artwork from the game itself. And so man, it was a delight to have these. Everything else in the game is, sort of basic. I think there's one little mini expansion in here. And I did learn that there are a ton of little promos and such, little miniature expansions, just adding extra spells that you can use your potions to fire off. And so I'm going to try and track down some of those, hopefully without spending an arm and a leg, as honestly those upgrades were, I think, more expensive than the game itself, but they really, really look nice for a 3D print. They're very well done. Wandering Towers. All right, up next is Sand Art. I also talked about this one last week. This box is very, very, very heavy for the simple reason that it has this massive booklet of the pages that you then draw on. I sent a picture of this to my sister, who plays board games as well, and she goes, "Are you playing a roll and write game?" I said, "No rolling, just writing." And even then, it's really kind of more coloring. We actually played this just last night, so I'll talk about it here again in a brief moment. Up next is Orbit. This is from Dr. Rainer Knizia. I talked about this one coming out of the Dice Tower Retreat. I had already backed this through Kickstarter, so I knew it was coming. And I just wanted to, hey, look at that, Greg. The back is upside down again. Anyways, I wanted to check it out, as I kind of like to do, sort of make sure that I'm going to open a box that I actually want to play. I did really enjoy it at the retreat. I've also played this one recently, so I'll talk about that again here in a moment. All right, so this is called Wildwoods Storyfold, or Storyfold Wildwoods. I'm not actually sure what the title is. Storyfold must be kind of like maybe it's kind of like a category of games. I'm not sure, because here it says SF and then just Wildwoods on the side. Anyways, this is from Open Owl Studios, I believe. Yes, Open Owl Studios. They reached out to me. In fact, they made a post, I believe, out on one of the social media pages that I am a member of, looking for reviewers. This is a solo-only game. One player. It doesn't even say 1+, just a 1+ story-driven game, a 10+ hour replayable campaign, it says here in the box, 30 to 60 minutes per session. Not a whole lot you can see on the back of this, but hopefully kind of a little bit you can make out. I don't know anything about it. They reached out to me before the Dice Tower retreat, so it was a couple weeks ago now, and said, yeah, hey, we'll get you a copy. And then just before I left, they said, and hopefully you can have something back to us by early October, which is 2 days from now, and this showed up late last week. So I haven't even had a chance to unwrap it. I'm going to try and get that done today. It's just been a very busy weekend. There's a lot going on, but I'm going to try and get this checked out. I have actually emailed them to ask them if they're still on their schedule. I haven't heard anything. So I don't know what's going on right now with this, but I'm going to try and check this out as it is a solo game, and I have certainly brought an awful lot of traffic to this channel with solo content, and I want to make sure those folks have something to enjoy. Moving on. Knife. I don't know what that could be for. Let's just stick that there for a moment. This came in just literally maybe an hour ago. This is Sweetlands with an upgrade pack. This is from Ukabakoya. I've talked about them many times in the past. They produced games such as Ostia, Aqua Garden. Those are the two that I have. They've got a bunch of other games out there. This is a very, very heavy, as I understand, a very, very deep, strategy game where you are sort of building a city. It's I believe a city builder, civ builder of some sorts, except for that everything is set in this sort of cute, baking, sugary environment. It actually, just theme-wise, it almost reminds me of the Sweet Rush video game within the Wreck-It Ralph movie. And even I always loved that setting. My daughter loved that setting. This is going to be, I think, way too hard for her to play yet. This is definitely a 14 and up game. But two things. Ukabakoya, they make fantastic games. And the theme, I think, could be a way to maybe start bridging the gap for my daughter to get into maybe some heavier games. This would be something that would at least catch her interest enough to see how it works, see how it plays, and kind of maybe decide if that's something she wants to try and warm up into. I don't know anything else about it. I don't even remember. I did research it when it was coming out, when it was on Kickstarter, as far as its mechanisms and such, and there was nothing there that what am I thinking of? Area control or betting or that kind of stuff. Like those things I don't typically really enjoy. There wasn't really any of that in here. I think it's a worker placement game, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I looked into this. Huge box, very, very heavy. And I know that it's got a lot of screen printed components, little milk bottles and, everything else. So I am really looking forward to checking that out. For now, it'll probably be something that Daniel and I dig into at some point. I picked up this. It's as empty. I've already taken the components out of it, but this is the Dragon Academy expansion to Wyrmpan. This was announced not that long ago, and I really did want to check this one out. It really just, it adds some new scoring cards, new dragon cards, kind of some basic stuff, just kind of adding to the content of the game. But it also does add this idea that you now have fledgling dragons, which are kind of between your babies and your adults. As the rules say, they're kind of like your teenagers, and you have to train them. The idea being that every time you visit that dragon in one of your 3 caves, you're going to hopefully be able to spend a resource, a component, or something that dragon needs to be trained, putting a cube on it, and then when you get that dragon fully trained, which can take anywhere from like 1 to 3 cubes, which is 1 to 3 visits, that then triggers off some additional abilities of that dragon. I'm a little worried in how that's going to work because I have certainly played games of this where I maybe visit my dragons 1 or 2 times for the entire game. And so this idea that I'm going to have to visit them several times before this effect even goes into play means I may get them trained just in time and then never actually trigger that effect. So we'll see. I obviously I don't know how that's going to work. It does add some new guild tiles. The guild tiles are one of my favorite aspects of Wyrmpan. This kind of track you spin around and you get to fire things off specific to those guilds. It adds a ton more variety just through those boards alone. So not a lot in here. Obviously a smaller box, just had a bunch of cards. It replaces the round tracker board of the base game, adds some cubes for the training tracks. That's really about it. So not too much. Although Wyrmpan is already kind of a full box. Let's see. Nothing else over here, but whoa. I've never done, well, I have done this before on the channel. I'm gonna have to, just give me a second. Hang on one moment. Box. Big box. We're gonna open it. This is real. I have not even, I know what it is. I've been tracking this bad boy. And now I'm gonna try and make sure I don't cut anything on the inside. Lift, slice. And I suddenly realized that putting this on the table might have, putting this on a I'm an idiot. Putting this on the table may have been a bad idea. So let's, lift with your knees. Okay. And we're back. All right. I gotta show you what this is. I'm excited for this. Mats. Let's get that knife out of the way. Little component. Dice. Holy crap. This was not all in. A visual upgrade pack. A... What the heck? Oh, this is a big dice tray that you snap together on the corners. I don't see that working. More bubble wrap. Oh my god, there's a box in the box. Okay. Little expansion. Another expansion. By now you can probably start reading titles. Good lord. Resources visual upgrade pack. A structures set. Whoop. That'd have been bad. Stay. The Havoc expansion. The Titan expansion. And then, oh my gosh, I got this is unbelievable. And I can hear what some of you are thinking. This is too much. You might be right. You might be right. Oh, good lord, this is heavy. I know, folks, this is must-see TV. Let's be honest. Eve, War for New Eden. I've talked about this one. I actually tried to go back and figure out when the first episode was. I know I mentioned this in the Ratchet back when I was doing the sort of crowdfunding, hey, what's coming to crowdfunding? What are you backing? That kind of a thing, which just never really took off for the channel, so I quit doing it. Obviously, I'm still very much a glutton for Kickstarter punishment, as this is no exception to the rule for sure. But I did talk about this one a while back. Oh my gosh. Maybe I should have pre-opened this. Oh man. This is a lot of shit. There you go. Okay, let's try and fix my tablecloth here. Now I've got cardboard dust everywhere. Like I said, this table is never clean. War for Eve, War for New Eden. This is based on the Eve Online video game. This is a 4X, big grand strategy game. I've seen some videos of it. I watched sort of like a demo of it. And I think I watched at least a partial playthrough video. I don't exactly remember what all I had followed. Now, this is from a relatively small publisher, Titan Forge Games. Well, I say small. I had not heard of them. I think they also do like some video game stuff. I don't really quite remember. But they did do a lot of tie-in with CCP Games, that is the creator of EVE Online. And I'll tell you, I have been so excited for this that over the weekend I actually went and I re-logged into my EVE Online accounts, 2 of my 3. EVE Online, for folks who don't know, is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. It is just a beast of a video game where you are going to pilot a huge variety of different spaceships, all set for different purposes. You can go on missions, you can join groups of other players, you can be an industrial player where you're building those ships and building the components and things that people are using. You can obviously get into all kinds of combat. There are safe and unsafe areas of this game that you can play in. I played EVE, as I was kind of mentioning, for a number of years, and I kind of dabbled in a lot of stuff, but there was still so much that I never got into. And it was honestly a little daunting. And because I think, I've talked before about not being a big fan of Take That games, conflict games, and the same goes for EVE Online. There were a couple times where, I got sort of cornered by another player, I got attacked by another player, and it just sends my blood pressure through the roof, and it's just frankly not good for me. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I just I never had a lot of drive to stick with the game, because I knew that there was a whole aspect of it that I was just avoiding in terms of combat, which of course is a big chunk of this game as well, as with any 4X type game. But I did see in those playthroughs that there's the ability to play this industry focused. There's the ability to kind of avoid conflict. You're able to come in here and build these massive space stations. There's just so much that's in this game. And the one thing that really spoke to me, and I'll wrap this up, the one thing that really spoke to me about this was I was watching a playthrough and I was seeing some of the cards that they had, just action cards or whatever it is that you're doing in the game. And one of them referred to Care Bears. Care Bears was a term for players like me who did not want to engage in combat, who were not, combat focused, and they called us Care Bears. It was something of a derogatory term, but on the same token, one that us Care Bears kind of tended to embrace. And for me, the fact that that was in the game, the fact that they obviously took a term created by players, for that game, and they put it into the board game, told me that this was something of an appropriate homage to that universe. I spent a lot of hours flying in EVE Online. I ran a corporation. I had friends all over the globe. A small group, it was just a couple of us. But that definitely was a unique time for me, and that was sort of that, that sort of internet family type thing. And while I didn't take it too seriously, I never got too wrapped up in it, obviously I quit. But it still was something that just had a lot of impact on me, and I think in a generally positive way. And so anyways, when the game was announced, I tried to avoid it. I was like, I really don't need to spend the $300 that game cost, but eventually it got me. So that is EVE War for New Eden. All right, there is one more game here to chat about, but I'm going to take this moment to talk about the subject of this video, the title of this video. And it's really not an announcement in any way, shape, or form. It's something I want to share. I am coming up on my 5-year anniversary of making content. My first video on the Dice Tower, I believe, landed somewhere in November of 2020. I did reach out to Tom somewhere in, I believe, September of 2020, and started doing stuff for the Dice Tower. This channel was created almost exactly at that same time frame. I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but I figured I'd just have it and worry about it later. Now here I am, of course, doing this. The Ratchet started almost 2 years ago, February of 2024. And so, here we are, episode 78. I remember the first couple episodes when I was, episode number 1, episode number 2. I was like, why am I even bothering with this? It's not going to last that long. I don't really need to number these. Well, I'm kind of glad I did. The other thing is that I can look back at some other sort of landmark things. The original thumbnail to the Ratchet looked like this. A very, very basic image. This was something that I had been using in my intros for all kinds of stuff. And it was just, again, I figured I'll just kind of use it as my backdrop, keep it very simple. But somewhere, early episodes, first four, someone said, you should really put your pictures of the games in your thumbnail. You should really make people see what this is. They're going to recognize some of that imagery and they're going to want to click. And I thought, damn it, that's a good idea. Just a few months ago, someone said, well, you should really put all the games in your description. In the video's description, you should put the list of games. And that way, if someone's searching for that game, your channel will have a higher chance to pop up. And I thought, damn it, that's a really good idea too. And I did that. And the reason I bring that up is because a couple weeks ago, episode 75 and a half, I talked about Jibber Jabble. And here's the thumbnail of that video with the Jibber Jabble box in the picture. Here's the video description with Jibber Jabble in the text. And here is my new copy of Jibber Jabble. The designer, Cassie, was looking to see if anyone was talking about her game. And she did a search, and she found that episode. She found this channel. She found me, and offered to send me a complimentary copy of Jibber Jabble. And it's a game. I've gotten a ton of games, already. But I tell you what, that was a rough day. Independent of that, of course. I was having a bad day at work. I'm still having a bad time at work. I'm not going to get into it. But I told Cassie that just sort of email back and forth that we had, man, it really just sort of cheered me up, and it gave me new perspective on a lot of things. And I want to take this moment to thank all of you, because it was those suggestions. It was those, careful and helpful critiques. Hey, you should really consider this. Hey, you should really consider that. And, I certainly haven't done everything the audience has asked for. I've tried. I know there's a lot of things that folks would love to see more of, or just see in general out of this channel. I am, again, a completely one-man band. But it really just made me appreciate how far this channel has come, how far I've come just as a videographer, if nothing else. But just to have someone reach out and say, hey, I just randomly tripped upon this. You were talking about my game. I'm just so pleased. Here, would you please take a copy of it? Absolutely, I'd be honored. And I'm very, very thankful for all of you who continue to make this channel what it is. So that's what I wanted to share. That is the end of New Games. How about I get to your answers to Question of the Week? All right, question of the week. I was surprised to only get 4 answers to this one last week. I figured a lot of people would have some good stories to tell, but, who knows, for whatever reason, that's okay. But I asked you last week, had you ever played a game either a number of times or maybe been in the middle of a game and suddenly realized you were playing it completely wrong? And here were the couple of answers that I got. Up first was Blowing Your Mind, who said their group realized after 10 years of playing Catan that a settlement can break another player's longest road. I'm assuming that's some sort of endgame scoring. I'll be honest, I've never played Catan, except for a dice version of it, which I haven't played in probably 10 years or so by now. But man, 10 years of realizing that you had a scoring thing wrong. That's substantial. Ecto Fox said he suddenly realized this past weekend that he's been playing Wonderland's War wrong because he was taught incorrectly. He said it wasn't game-breaking, but certainly made the game more exciting. Now, I had not played Wonderland's War. I don't think that's my kind of game. But, and I don't know what rule Jeff got wrong here, but I certainly have done that where, oh man, we've been playing this wrong and it sounds even way better now. So that's pretty fun story. CR Poll mentioned a couple of games like a Ticket to Ride expansion where it wasn't the length that mattered, giggity, but instead the number of stops that provided scoring. He also mentioned a card game, the name of which he couldn't remember, where he learned mid-game that he couldn't rearrange the cards in his hand and hated the game after realizing that rule. That sounds like maybe Scout or Bonanza. Those are the 2 games I can think of off the top of my head. You cannot rearrange the cards. At least I think that's Scout. And folks can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Scout as well, where you cannot reorganize your hand until you're taking cards from other players, I think, and then you can rotate them or put them in any order you want, something like that, if I recall. And lastly, it was Jeremy Brooks who mentioned the rule in Ticket to Ride where the double routes depicting 2 side-by-side trains can't be used in 2 or 3 player games, which had a significant impact on gameplay for him. Yeah, I remember that one. You kind of see those, and you're like, oh, that's real nice when you get some flexibility. Oh, not when I'm just playing with my wife, who I often play games with. And so, and those are kind of funny because then you go and you play it later with, 4 players, so obviously you can't even use it in a 3-player game. And you're like, oh, I get to use those other tracks now. Yay! I certainly, some of those games that change the different player counts, you finally get to realize, oh, I get to play it at the exciting player count this time. Definitely makes a big impact. Anyways, that was question of the week. I think I talked about last week. It was the game. Gosh, I can't remember what the game was now that we were playing. And I suddenly realized into it that, it was the Pursuit of Happiness. And I realized I left out an end game scoring criteria, cards that you're supposed to be working towards. Because I was like, what is end game scoring? Oh, crap. And that thing had, been playing for so long, there was just no way we were going to redo it. But then there was the other game that we were playing last week where and that was I think it was 2 weeks ago, the Eminent Domain, that we realized I was just completely doing it wrong to the point that it had completely broken the game. And I was like, look, we've got to play this over again. We were about maybe halfway into it. And it slowed the game down a little bit because without those engine building cards always in play, I was triggering them way quicker than I should have been. And that made it feel like, it made us get through the game quicker. Anyways, so those were just a couple of instances where I was certainly playing the game wrong. All right, let's go ahead and swing into some recently played games. All right, so here we go with some recently played games. Now, the quick bit of good news is I got to play a couple of games here in the past week. The bad news is I don't think any of these are new to the Ratchet. In fact, I think I've talked about all of these in maybe the past 2 months. So I'll get through these fairly quick, I think, more talking about, because I've played almost all these with new people. And so that'll be kind of nice to be able to share some context, some opinions from other gamers. So the first thing I did, and you've heard about this one recently, is Gilded Realms. I first played this thing solo this past Monday, and then played it on, I believe, Thursday with 2 other friends of mine. My good buddy Daniel and my friend Mike came over, and we got into this. And I'm forming a little bit of a crush on this game. I kind of like it. And I couldn't even exactly tell you why. There are certainly some things I don't love about it. The combat system is convoluted because if you're being attacked by a player or if you're being attacked by the game, you resolve that in 2 completely different ways. You roll dice against a player. You just count up your shields against the game. And the game will sort of knock your people out for a little bit while an opponent won't, which is weird. If you're attacking a player versus attacking the game, you're going to roll dice either way. But again, the way that you resolve things is different. And sort of knowing how things act against other things is just confusing as all heck in the combat aspect. I also don't love the randomness at which those events occur. So we played an epic game of this. Both of these games were epic games. It's a 12-round game, and each round sort of an event reveals itself. Now in the solo play, I actually got to look at most of those events ahead of time. And I'm now learning how you can do that more effectively. So it is one thing I figured out with this is that in that first round, you should send out a caravan. In the second round, that caravan resolves, and you can pick a couple different rewards. There are 5 different rewards to choose from when that caravan resolves, whether or not it's even been attacked by another player. It's another aspect of the game I do like is that when you get attacked by a player, the repercussions are very, very minimal for you. You might lose a couple of gold. That's really it. Maybe a card that you were trying to build, which if you really wanted to build it, just build it. Don't let it sit there and get taken. Anyways, one of the rewards you can take from a caravan is getting to peek ahead at any card. And then every time a caravan resolves from that point forward, you'll get to take that bonus over and over and over again. So I launched it early. I took that reward, and that let me look at a lot of cards throughout the game. In that solo game, I especially made sure that I caravanned every single round I could, which is every other round. So I got 6 caravans done, and that was great. In the competitive game with my friends, I got 5 caravans launched. There was one year that I just could not do it because I knew I'd peeked ahead and I knew that a huge attack was coming. And so I used all my resources in that round to prepare myself militarily for that fight, which then did not leave me enough resources to send out the caravan. I think a valuable trade-off in the long run. In fact, I was way prepared for that combat. I didn't take any damages, and I could have even suffered a little bit more damage before I would have had any more of a problem. So I probably could have gotten that caravan out, but better safe than sorry. Anyways, I I feel like there is still so much to this game to discover. I feel like there's a process to kind of go about things. My buddy Mike, who had not played it before, 3 times like I had, clobbered us fairly well. I mean, it wasn't a blowout in score, but he won it quite well. And he was saying, well, I was just using every resource I could and just building every single one of my cards. And I was like, yeah, but you still only get to build so many. How did it give you that advantage? And I don't actually know the answer to that. There is simultaneous play. It's possible something got goofed. Who knows? I don't think that happened. But, he was able to get a lot of stuff out that I certainly wasn't able to do. There is still some luck in these Endeavor cards that you're drawing off these decks. I say decks. It's just one card, one deck split into 2 smaller decks. But these cards give you the ability to upgrade your provinces, but if you keep getting the same card, as I did in that multiplayer game, I just kept drawing the same damn card. We were engaging in some trade, which I had never done before. That was kind of nice, but it still didn't give me what I needed to be able to make the upgrades that I needed, and at the end, I had a bunch of cards I literally just couldn't use, and I think that's kind of one reason why I was a little bit behind the curve in that game. But I got to play as a new faction. The faction had a vault aspect where you could keep putting money into your vault, and that would give you special little bonuses. You could even spend that money in your vault to take more special bonuses, although resupplying it then was a challenge, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm having fun with this, and I want to keep trying to poke and prod at it to see what else I can get out of the engine, out of the system. I may not continue to talk about this game just because I think I'm going to keep playing it, and I'm sure you're going to get tired of hearing about it. That is Gilded Realms. There's a lot of boxes over here. There's no room to put stuff. After that, so that was Thursday. On Saturday, a local gamer had an event at a library, maybe about 20 minutes from here. And he's been doing it quite a bit. This is the first time I've ever been able to actually go and participate in this event. And we played Galileo Galilei. There was maybe 15 or so people there when I had to leave. I was only able to stay there for one game. This one, we had a couple Oktoberfest things to get to. But I did sit down with my good friend Troy. He's the coordinator of the Wyrmpan local convention that I've talked about. Another gentleman who I'd never met before, real nice guy by the name of Carl. Hope I can run into him again. But anyways, we sat down and we played this. Now, Carl was a little nervous because he had played, I'll say, more medium lightweight games. Some Ticket to Rides, some, I think he mentioned Catan, and there may have been one other in there that I recognize, but definitely lighter games. And so he was a little nervous about getting this. Even I was a little nervous about getting into this, but he actually did quite well. And I was able to remember most of the rules. I had to verify just a couple things in the rule book, but I was able to teach it, I think, fairly effectively. And we got into this. Now, again, I'm not going to get into the details of this. I talked about this coming out of Gen Con. You can go and check those episodes. I think it was around late 60s, early 70s in the episode count. But this is a game about basically using dice as resources. You're pipping up the dice. You never roll the dice, but you're just trying to increase the value on these dice, then go out and make these discoveries in astronomy. So you're trying to find planets or unique, sort of artifacts of our solar system. You can also discover constellations, which doesn't give you as big of a reward, but it can stack up some other useful stuff for you. But you're spending your dice to do that. You're putting out comets, which helps decrease the cost of the dice that you would need to spend. You're putting out I mentioned the constellations. You're taking these actions. You can upgrade those actions. There's all these different things that you can do, and the value of that is that there are these tracks that you can climb up throughout the game to sort of set your end game bonuses based on how much of that thing you do. So, for example, we had a goal out there to try and get a lot of comets out, and if you manage to get to the top of that track, then we were going to get 3 points for every comet that we deployed. I managed to get the most comets out. That kind of helped out. And it's different every time. The tracks, the rewards from those tracks, the multipliers of those tracks, and the actual goal of that track change with every play. So it's really one of those games where, and I didn't realize it right away, that you really should look at that at the very beginning of the game and say, okay, I should probably try and focus on getting up that track and getting those rewards. However, one of the things that you kind of have to deal with when you're climbing up those tracks and doing a lot of other things in this game is catching the attention of the Inquisition. And that is marked by these sort of red tokens that come out. I think they're pictured right here. And these are people who are a little bit not happy about the discoveries that you're making and the challenges to ideals that was taking place. And I made it very, very clear to these guys, like, that track, this whole Inquisition thing, this interrogation aspect that happens when those Inquisitors move down your personal track, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot. And if you let it run away from you, you're going to lose a ton of points at the end of the game. And it is something that people have complained about even on BGG, is that, oh, the game is great except for this thing, except for that thing is really the major tie-in of the theme to Galileo himself and the other, prominent astronomers of that era. And I talked about this in the previous episode, it's, on the surface, it's just a really, really hard challenge, but when you really dive into it, you realize just how difficult of a life these guys had trying to make these discoveries under the constant pressure, against their own discoveries. Anyways, and because of that, everyone was kind of prepared for it. I was even sort of helping them strategize. Well, hey, you could combo this move with that move, and that would help you, get this guy out of the way before he scores and gives you a bunch of negative points. And I think because of that, all of us either sort of broke even or even gained a couple of points from the Inquisition track, which isn't totally accurate to the theme, but I think it makes the game a little bit more palatable as opposed to having your character assassinated towards the end of the game. I don't know, whatever. But had a great play of this. I did win this one. Again, I'm going up against experienced gamers here, so I got to, you got to kind of play hard. So I'm glad I got to try that one out again. It'd been a little while since I played it. That evening, Saturday evening, after a couple of Oktoberfest events and a nap, we went out to the local speakeasy for some gaming. Now, my good friend Winston showed up. Winston is an old salt of a gamer. I mean, he's been playing games for a long time. His collection at his house is around 2,000 games. He's lost track. And so, him showing up, well, first of all, was, a nice treat because he lives quite far away. So I was glad to see him. I hadn't seen him in a little while. But also, he was going to be, I don't think expecting, but I would want to put slightly more involved games in front of him, right? Not little light cutesy stuff. But then our neighbors showed up. Literally, they live right there. And they don't play games at all. Like, at all. And so I was suddenly between this mountain or rock and a boulder, whatever it is, a rock and a hard place where, okay, I got like someone who really wants like heavy involved games. I mean, he was at the library that morning, Winston, and he was playing, some big 18xx Rails game. And then I have another couple who play like Rummy, maybe, or Bridge. So the first game I broke out for us was Tacta. I've talked about this one a lot, so I won't get into it, but our neighbors really had a good time with this. They really enjoyed it. I do love the fact that with the little promo pack that I've got, you can play this up to 8, although our table was not quite up for snuff for that, but we did have a nice game of this, and I think my wife actually won the first game of Tacta, which was nice, or this game of Tacta, which was great. Also played then Drop It. I was trying to suggest Wandering Towers to our friends, our neighbors, and they're like, maybe we'll just sit and watch. And then Ash remembered that I had brought Drop It. And again, it's just a very, very lightweight but fun game. There's a little bit of strategy to this. And I'll apologize now, I forgot to take any pictures of us playing Drop It, but you are just dropping pieces down into this little insert. You're trying to not touch pieces of your color, not touch pieces of the same shape, and then not touch the edges of this sort of, I don't know, contraption, because there are spots on it that will tell you you can't touch this color, or you can play with an edge that you can't touch the shape. And so, you're kind of looking here saying, well, I can drop this round piece, but there's a bunch of round pieces there. I can drop over here, but then there's blue, or I can drop it on this edge, but then that little spot on the side is blue and I can't touch it. So you're suddenly going like, holy crap, like there's like 1 little millimeter that if I land it just right, I should be okay. And what I like about this, we played with the Joker variant, which gives you 2 little tokens that you can spend to allow you to score a move that otherwise wouldn't score. So if you drop a piece and ends up touching one of your own pieces, or, in any way breaks one of those 3 conditions, but it would have been worth 9 points, you can spend one of your 2 Joker pieces and score those 9 points. But of course, once you're out, you're out. It's just a fun game. I do wish you could actually play this at more players. I wish I had, maybe like a nice 6-player version. That'd be nice for an event like that, because even Winston was able to appreciate some of the strategy of it. But, for our neighbors, they were just dropping little pieces and having fun. And so it worked out pretty well for that. Drop It. Just a nice, simple, lightweight game. Up next, so that was, after that, our neighbors left, and I was able to get at least one game played with Winston that was a little more involved. We played Orbit. This is by Dr. Reiner Knizia. I talked about this one coming out of the Dice Tower Retreat. And as I mentioned earlier, I had already backed this on Kickstarter, and it just came in this past week. This is a relatively simple game, but there's definitely a lot of strategy to it, and a lot of tactical play to it as well, because you're going to have these planets all over this board. You're going to have these little space station tokens all over the place where you can go and collect various rewards or recharge your energy supplies or whatever. And you're simply trying to move from your home planet, visit every other planet in the solar system, and get back to your planet to end the game. The first person to do that and get home immediately wins the game. That's it. And that is it. I mean, on your turn, you're going to be moving your ship. You only get a couple of spaces to move. The spaces, if you can see it all on this board, there are these little triangular pieces, little triangular sections, I should say, on the board. And it is the point where those triangles come together that is your movement. So you're moving from point to point to point. And so you can see there's a lot of triangles on that board. It's a large, expansive board. And it'll seem like, gosh, I've got to get 12 spaces over here. This planet, there's no way that's going to happen. Until you realize that, well, if I actually go and move to this planet, and then I play this card, that planet will move, and I can ride this planet over here, and then maybe on my next turn, if no one else has moved these things, I can make just a couple of jumps over to that spot. It kind of brings things a little closer into perspective. And of course, you can make these wild swing movements, just sort of jump all the way across the place. And you suddenly realize that the board is not as big as it looks, but man, you've still got to be very, very careful in how you plan. I've had a lot of fun with this. A little bit, got, a couple times someone kind of moved me where I didn't want to go. In fact, at one point, my wife sent me clear across the board to the point that I was like, what am I going to do? What we realized when we set this thing up is there's two sides of the board. I'd only ever played on the sort of easy side of the board. There's another side of the board that is a bit more involved, and the rules are a little nebulous as to what you're supposed to do, but the orbiting paths of these planets, the planets have set paths that they follow. But on the one side of the board, they can actually fork. You actually come to like a T intersection, although, of course, it's a Y intersection. And it tells you that the person who's moving the planet, when they get to that spot, they can determine where the planet goes next. And what I couldn't tell was, can you literally spin like almost a 180? Or do you have to kind of keep following the general direction of the planet? And it didn't say. And we weren't really sure how to play it. But that adds even more stress to it because, the planet could end up here or end up here. I really have no idea. Maybe I need to try and get to it before it forks, etc. But the one planet moves across one end of the board and then re-enters on the other end of the board. And so I was able to hop on that planet, zip almost all the way back to where I was, make a couple of points of movement, and got back to where I was trying to get to. So it was kind of like nice try. I managed to get by. Just had fun with this. I did manage to win this game as well. So a little payback, Katie, who made me lose the last time I played. Just a fun game. That was Orbit. And the last game that we played just last night, I asked my daughter, you want to do Wandering Towers, you want to try the sand art game? And she said, let me try the sand art game. I talked about this one, I think, just last week. My friend Chris introduced me to this, at the Speakeasy gaming night just last week. And I was really surprised at just how comfortable this game is, how quick it tends to move. And, there's planning to it, but you never really feel stressed out with this. We taught it to our daughter. She was intrigued. We got into it. She made a couple of goofs. There are these layer cards, and they are hard to explain without a visual element in front of me, but the layer cards have 3 rows on them of colors, and they correspond to the colors on the side of your bottle. I'll try and hold this up here. So you got the bottle, and you got these little colors on the edge. And what you're trying to do is play a layer card so that the colors of that layer card match up with the edges of your bottle. The colors in the middle of the bottle don't matter. It's just those edges. And we found out, actually reading the rules of this, that you can score that layer card on either side. So if you manage to replicate its colors on both sides of the bottle, you can score it over again. Also, the higher point value cards actually have a split in the color. So you may have 6 different colors, 3 on one side, 3 on the other. And what you're supposed to do is line those cards up with the outside edge of the bottle. My daughter mistook it to meant that she had to put the card in the middle of the bottle. And she was arranging the right edge of the card to the right edge of the bottle, which makes sense. But you're supposed to basically do the right edge of the card the right edge of the card to the left edge of the bottle, the left edge of the card to the right edge of the bottle. Yes, it's confusing. And in fact, when she laid the card on the bottle, I realized just how neatly it lines up if you actually do that. It almost looks like that was the idea. And so I can understand how she made that mistake. And we gave her a pass. We said, hey, you know what? We'll let you score that card because she had managed to get both sides done. And she was really bummed to lose those points. So I let her have it. No big deal. We were sitting there playing, and the other thing with this game that can be a little weird is that it accelerates as you play. So initially you're choosing one action on this workbench. I mentioned last week that you have a little hand token and the hand will slide in the direction that the thumb is pointing. So you have to move in that direction, stop on an action card, flip the hand, and on your next turn you got to head the other direction. And at first it seems a little odd, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it's not that big of a deal. But then as you're playing and as you're filling up your jar with sand, you start to unlock the ability to maybe just stay on the same card that you're on. Just flip the direction, but stay on the card. Take a different action on that same card. Or you can start to get extra sand. Or you can start to lose the need to actually flip your hand. You can just leave your hand facing the same direction. And eventually, you get to take an additional action. You get to take basically 2 turns on your turn. And so it's a little confusing because you kind of get into a rhythm. And the game can be quite quick. Okay, I'm going to go here and get 3 sand. You go ahead. I'm going to just mark off that 3 sand. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pour sand. Now I got to color in my jar. It's going to take me a good minute or 2. But I know what I'm doing. You go ahead. There's nothing else for me to do on the main board. And you kind of sit there and you're coloring. I like to make it look nice and neat and pretty. And then someone says, okay, it's your turn. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, great. Well, I'm going to go over here and get more sand. Go ahead. Oh, it's my turn again. Oh, I'm going to go mix some sand. No, it's my turn again. I'm going to color some more. And it's great. It's nice. But then as that game starts to speed up, like, oh, geez, okay, now which abilities do I have? Okay, now I get to take 2 actions. Gosh, how do I maximize getting 2 turns? I almost don't think it's necessary. It's not a bad thing. But it almost kind of clogs up the game a little bit because as you're playing it, you have to change the way that you're processing your own turn because the turn structure itself changes. Now it's not just doing one thing. Now it's doing 2 things. Now it's not flipping your hand, or maybe I want to flip my hand. Well, now I got to think about this. Hang on a second. And it just, I don't know, it makes the game almost more clunky in trying to speed it up. Again, I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just a little weird. I think you very could easily just ignore that. Just ignore the upgrades. Just keep playing it the same way. It would take longer. Or just start with all those upgrades already unlocked and kind of play the game however you want. Again, not a bad thing. Just it was a little bit more difficult to explain to my daughter, and she kind of experiencing that for the first time got a little bogged down by it. And also with the fact that she kind of, when you're taking these turns so quickly and you're trying to kind of plan ahead, okay, I'm trying to match these layers. I'm trying to make these pictures that you have out. You have 3 sort of patterns that you can make. And if you make them out of a certain color, you'll get, various points. And so there's kind of a lot to consider. Okay, what colors do I need? Where am I pouring it? What's the right order to pour this stuff so I can get that pattern just right? And with the fact that the turns can be so quick, you can actually kind of get bogged down. I even started to color in a spot by mistake. She started to color in a spot by mistake. Just little things like that we kind of goof because the game is so quick. So anyways, I all that being said, I did sit there at one point and I'm coloring in and I'm trying to get the edges real nice and neat. And my daughter was doing something and my wife was doing something. And I thought, this is just so relaxed. This is before we started to unlock all those extra abilities, but it was still so nice. I'm not stressed. I'm not, I hope that person doesn't take my action. Because even if they did, my wife kept taking the mood that my daughter wanted, and it was stressing my daughter out. But I was like, even if that happens, just go over here and grab an extra piece of sand. Go over here and maybe work on something else. You're going to get to do what you need to do. It's just going to take an extra round. It takes several rounds to fill up that bottle. You got time. Don't worry about it. And it was just so zen-like. Maybe one of the most chill games I've ever played. Just having a lot of fun with sand art. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of games over there. Ugh, I'm not looking forward to cleaning that up. Okay, folks, that is the end of the Weekly Ratchet, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a question for next week. This is not necessarily inspired by the gaming get-together this past weekend, but here's the question. Have you ever had a gaming event go completely as unplanned? People didn't show up, or something was missing from the game, or you had planned to play something and you ended up playing something completely different. Who knows? Whatever. I'm curious about your off-the-rails gaming experience stories. That is it for episode number 78. Thank you so much for watching. As always, folks, I will talk to you very soon. Be sure to get your answers into question of the week. Don't forget, by the way, also there is a sort of a Ask Me Anything type segment that's ongoing. I haven't talked about this in a long time, but if there's something that you are challenged by, something you're trying to understand, maybe you're looking for a game recommendation, maybe you're trying to understand a certain rule, maybe you have a question about a mechanism or a style of play, just ask the question in the comments, and if I can't answer it, I will try to find an answer for you. That is an open invite for anyone who's interested. Also, I will say that if you're watching this, maybe you watch this episode every week, maybe you're not a subscriber, maybe you don't comment, feel free to do either of those things. I am not one to go like and subscribe because I hate doing that, but those little clicks, those little interactions, they are just encouragement to this one-man band to keep doing what I'm doing. So feel free to hit the like button or hit the subscription button or just throw a comment, whatever you'd like to do. I'd love to hear from you. That is it. I promise. Enough yapping. I'll chat with you soon. Cheers.